Welcome to the Big Screen Bulls podcast, a podcast where Caleb Kindle and Christian McCrite give their reviews and reactions to what's happening on the big screen. They talk about films, TV series, and other forms of media entertainment. Episodes are released every Monday. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast listening platform. Be sure to follow the show's Instagram page at Big Screen Bowls Podcast, where new hints and updates will be released about future episodes.
Welcome back to the Big Screen Bowls Podcast, everyone, where we have me, Caleb Kindle, and the podcast dweller himself, Christian McCrite.
Thank you, podcast dweller. I've never heard anything like that. Good morning. Good morning.
We are in a special time in our instance. We've got Christmas this week when we're filming this podcast.
It's Christmas time, baby.
Should have put a Santa hat on for this one, but
but you guys won't be able to see it anyways.
Joke's on you guys.
The joke's on you.
I am wearing a hat.
So last episode we went through our middle 10 MCU movies, and so now what we are doing is we are taking the top 10 and we're splitting it into 2 episodes.
We understand this is about to get pretty serious with kind of our top 10, so we're gonna have
the gloves are coming off.
We're gonna have to split this in half, or you can see me and Christian just brag about how amazing Disney and the MCU are for these last 10 probably. So
oh yeah, just how good it has been. And we are only doing 10 through 6 for this one, and then for the next one we will do 5 through 1. So be on the lookout for that. And also when it comes to our ranking so far of all these films, I'm actually going to be putting highlights of those on Instagram that will be accompanied by little songs that I feel like encompasses our opinions with the movie. So be on the lookout for that, because that's going to be fun.
I think we should go ahead and get straight into it. Just to really show the people what they came here to listen to.
That's right.
Mediocre commentary on MCU universe movies.
Mediocre commentary by 2 people that most people have no idea who at least one of us 2 are. So,
like, I don't even know who I am.
All right. So, Kindle, what's your number 10?
My number 10 is going to be Guardians of the Galaxy.
Okay. Oh, really? Really?
So
that's pretty low compared to normal standards, I think.
Yeah, number 10. Again, what can I say here? What can I say that's bad? What can I say is good? There's a lot to say. It's like bringing in like the MCU version of Avengers, except it's the outcast of the Avengers, all together into one movie. And guess what? The chemistry worked.
Yeah,
it worked really well. Like, you have Rocket the Raccoon, you have Star-Lord, you have Drax, you have Groot, and
Gamora.
Again, it's a ragtag team of bandits, mercenaries almost, that you wouldn't expect would be such good cinema.
No one expected this movie to be as good as it was.
Exactly. And it really just introduces us to the cast very well. And not even just introduces us to the cast, but just really paints that overall great picture with them as well, too. So I'd say this movie was, it's exactly what I would have wanted to see in a movie like this. It's like, a lot of times you can compare it to like the Avengers in some ways, and I feel a lot of people do.
Mm-hmm.
It's not really just that. Like, they're not the world's strongest
anything.
Anything. It's just a ragtag group of people that are able to barely get along long enough to achieve the objective.
Yeah. I remember when the poster first came out for this movie, or whenever the rumors were going around that this movie was going to be made, and it showed like this vague poster of like the stars, and maybe it showed like a small character icon for each one of the Guardians, and it said like, oh, the Guardians of the Galaxy coming in, what was it, 2015? About 2015, 2016. And I was like, oh yeah, who are those guys? I'm like, what in the world is this? I'm not a hardcore comic book reader or follower, I'm not a hardcore reader in general. But I looked up some information on them. I was like, okay, I'm kind of interested. They're going like real space opera with stuff like this. And it ended up being a massive success. Ended up being one of the most successful movies of all time. And half of the reason is because of the soundtrack. The soundtrack is phenomenal.
Who would ever thought you could take like 80s music and mix it in with space
and it makes like
pirates?
Yeah, and it's like the icon of your movie.
Yeah.
Now the only weird song that's in there is like Cherry Bomb. That one's kind of weird for me, but all the others, like Hooked on a Feeling, like all those, especially that one in particular, because that's the staple of it, is just really, really good.
Yeah. No, I'm just trying to think of like what was really wrong with this, but I would say maybe just in personal preference, why it's not like in the top 5 or a tad bit higher than that was just, again, it checked a lot of boxes. It was original, number 1.
Yeah.
Number 2, it simple in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
But still complex enough. But I don't know, maybe one of the biggest plot holes maybe that was eventually later killed off was the whole entire aspect that Star-Lord was a Celestial.
Yeah.
I think maybe in some ways that just like didn't make a whole lot of sense because like I think Star-Lord's power to me was just his kind of like cunning and ability to kind of work himself out of situations. I just felt like it was a little bit strange that it was only used one time where he would grab the Power Stone, able to survive it and to defeat the enemy, which I can't remember his name. Ronan, yeah.
And like as another point, Ronan wasn't the strongest villain either.
Yeah.
So
he was better than a lot of others, though. I will say that too. Like
he's kind of cool.
Drax's hatred for him, that kind of like
yeah,
it helped it build his reputation, which you didn't have to see him on screen to be able to start to fear and worry about him as well too. But I can say that would be another thing as well too, is that we have seen better villains, which you'll see probably all of these will have better villains.
Most all of these on the rest of this list.
So I'd say that's about it, but that's just kind of being nitpicky, honestly, at the end of this.
But it's a good movie.
It's a great good movie. Can't wait for number 3 to come out, which is
I know, so excited.
Coming out really soon.
It's going to be their last movie, their last outing, and can't wait for it. It's going to be great.
Oh yeah, but Christian, what is your number 10?
You discussed this in our last episode, but Age of Ultron, Avengers: Age of Ultron. This movie, to me, man, I really like this movie. Most people saw it as kind of like a disappointment as a follow-up to the first Avengers movie, but I don't see it that way. But that's also because it kind of plays to my particular taste. It's a lot darker. It's a lot grittier. James Spader is the perfect voice for Ultron. I think I said the last episode that it was the Avengers versus Robert California from The Office. And I'm totally on board with that. Now, of course, I just finished watching The Office for like the first time not too long ago. So I'm late to the party. But the stakes are higher. I love the kind of like not yin yang, but I wonder if dichotomy is the right word between Ultron and Tony Stark. Like almost as if like and the movie makes references to like Ultron, his personality, the way he does things, like he draws inspiration from Tony Stark, but taken in an extremely wrong direction. And while Tony tries to make this shield around the world for good, it ends up going really bad, and Ultron essentially begins taking over. The action sequences are great. This has one of my favorite opening scenes in the MCU. It's not my favorite, but it's one of my favorites because it opens with the Avengers taking down a Hydra base. And so they're going through the snow, and there's that one like slow motion shot of them like going over the ridge, like on like in this like snowy forest. Super cool. You get to see Hulk smash stuff. Everyone's doing things that are pretty clever. Captain America's got like a magnet on his shield now. You kind of see that. Super cool. There's funny banter. There's a lot of good banter in this movie. But the reason why it's number 10 and not higher is because it does lack in a couple of departments. This movie was really hyped, and Ultron's one of my favorite Marvel villains. But I feel like his plan to kind of eradicate the Earth and then like kind of talking crap about like fleshly people, but then trying to transport him into like it's kind of like a fleshy type body, like when he's trying to become Vision essentially to eradicate everything. I wasn't always on board for that. It was a pretty big plot device that I thought kind of detracted away from everything. Things move too fast. The romance between Black Widow and Hulk is really weird to me. It's very strange to watch on screen because like they have chemistry. Now you can see that their chemistry is kind of forced, and I don't like that. But there's something there, but it's never addressed like ever again. Like in Avengers Infinity War, like Bruce talks to Natasha for like half a second, and then that's like the last time they ever addressed that. I think it's because they knew that it didn't work out too well. But yeah, the good in the movie, the villain's awesome. Love him. Thor's role in this movie is also really weird. And he has to like...
Very brief, maybe?
Yeah, very short. And he has to like go take off his shirt and sit in a water cave to figure out what's happening with the Infinity Stones. So that's something. But it really does what this movie does better than setting up for Infinity War, which is kind of a problem. It does better setting up for Captain America Civil War than it does for Infinity War. And that's both a good and a bad thing. But overall, I really like this movie. I think it's fun. Some of the action scenes are awesome. The scene between the Hulkbuster and the Hulk fighting, super cool. Ultron's, I mean, his voice is just menacing. He's very articulate and he commands every scene. But other than that, like I really like this movie, but it does have those handful of things that I think hold it back. So
yeah, no, I think I've mentioned it in the previous podcast, at least. It's just, I felt like there's just so much going on, especially when you added Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch to it, that just really kind of confused me in some ways where you didn't have enough time for Thor. And that's probably the main reason I put it lower on the list as well. But again, still great. It's an Avengers movie. Like those are all going to be very high.
Right. So that's my number 10. So what's your number 9?
Number 9 will be the original Avengers.
Okay.
Marvel's Avengers.
Yeah. So you have it a little bit higher than I do.
Yeah, again, I know you said it in one of the last podcasts, is that nostalgia doesn't really play into what you have as much. But for me, I really feed off a lot of that. And I feel like Marvel's Avengers really pushes it over the edge where, like, I feel like there's a few movies or core movies that are inside of the MCU that really allowed them to go further and further and further into this. It's something that DC's never been able to do because they just never had a very high grossing movie that was able to break box offices that they can continue to build that story and build that legacy off of. And I thought Marvel's Avengers really was that. It was the kind of the launch pad, and really even launch pad in my mind for nerd culture in general. Yeah,
the groundbreaking formula that we can have these types of movies now.
Exactly. And it's like you take all these action stars from previous movies that all was pretty successful. Iron Man, Captain America, The Incredible Hulk, Thor. It was a long wait to build all these movies together and to put them all together into a scene. And just kind of like I mentioned, Guardians of the Galaxy, honestly, I was really debating having number 10 and number 9 flip-flop, but
I see.
Nostalgia pushed Marvel's into the number 9 spot. And it's just the chemistry between these people are awful on a team. And I think that's awesome because like these guys were all alpha dogs within their own movies and their own stories. And now they have to all get along with each other. And I love the chemistry between Captain America and Iron Man.
Yeah.
Especially because, again, Captain America comes right out of the ice and it's just like, I'm ready for the next order.
Yeah, he takes no breathers. He's just like, yep, I'm ready for whatever it is I'm told to do. Yep. But this is also pre-Winter Soldier as well.
Exactly. That's when, things will change. But you really do see like this movie, I think, sets up a lot where like how you can know that he learns from Winter Soldier.
Sure.
And you see him have this interactions with Tony Stark of like, man, I really respected your father a lot. he built my shield and did all this. And Tony Stark is nothing like his dad.
Yeah.
With just like being arrogant, cocky, and all this stuff. And Cap's not a big fan of any of that stuff. He's a straight shooter all the way. And you really see these two personalities clash with each other of Captain America can't trust Iron Man because he's too conceited and thinks about himself too much. And Iron Man doesn't trust Captain America because he's too much of a goody two shoes to do what's right.
He won't take the risks. Yeah.
Exactly. Then you have Loki as the villain within all this.
Yeah.
One of the most perfect villains. He was such a perfect villain. They tried to make him villains in other movies just because he was such a good villain in this movie.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's a good point.
And just his like reasoning and concept of things is pretty cool too. He wants to be a god. He wants to be worshipped.
Yeah. I love how one of his first like evil things that he does is just slam some guy on a table and stab a thing through his eye. And he just looks up to people and like waves. And then he gets like a bunch of people to like kneel before him, like outside. Yeah. I'm like, that's a very low key thing to do.
Exactly. Yeah. Gets all of his gear on.
Yeah.
Produces it up. And
the dialogue in this movie is really good too.
Oh my gosh. And you have Captain America jump out and say the last person somebody stood up on I can't remember it now, but the last person that would put people down or whatever was.
He has a lot of good lines in this movie.
Yeah.
I know that one of them is like, there's only one God, ma'am, and I'm pretty sure he doesn't dress like that.
Yeah.
And like Loki's in the Quinjet or whatever, and they hear like lightning boom or whatever. They hear something, and it's like, "What? You're afraid of a little lightning?" It's like, he's like, "I'm not overly fond of what follows," and I'm like, "That's clever." Yeah. Then they have the fight between like Iron Man and Thor, and like Thor's electricity is powering Iron Man's suit, and I'm like, this is cool. I like this.
And I love to say it too. I love the power scaling between all this as well too.
Yeah.
Like it's almost like rock, paper, scissors. Like Iron Man beats Captain America on a 1v1, but Thor can't beat Captain America on a 1v1. So it's like they all have their own like powers and sets that could trump each other or complement each other.
Yeah, it's really it's a good mix of people. Yep. And then Hulk just can't lose anyways, but that's okay.
Hulk is just flying around.
He's the outlier.
You have them fighting each other for a period of time and then all fighting together. It's just breaking cinema history at the end of this.
Sure.
Again, what it didn't do well, Hawkeye was really weirdly used in this movie, being a slave half the time.
Yeah, he spent most of the time not being a hero.
Yeah. And Loki doesn't, which I guess he loses his staff, so he doesn't have the ability to control people. So we never see it ever again, really, of him controlling people. But yeah, the controlling aspect of things was really, really weird in some ways. Like I know they needed to give him more backup, but
they immediately kill off Phil Coulson, who's like a beloved character, and they bring him back in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., but like that's the first Avengers movie. Like think of all the good interactions they could have had with him over the time. But
there was a lot of funny ones. They're like, he sees Captain America, it's like
he's like,
I have your baseball cards.
He's like, I have your cards. Yeah, that's really fun. It's a fun movie.
Yeah, it definitely is. And yeah, it's might not be a tad bit higher just because what it sets up for the future is just that much more excellent.
My number 9 is Spider-Man Homecoming. I like this movie. This movie's good. This movie has my third favorite villain in the MCU. I need to check real quick.
Vulture.
Yeah. Third favorite villain in the MCU. Well, actually, with Spider-Man No Way Home, I may have to think about that a little harder now. But the Vulture is such a good villain, and I'm going to immediately talk about him before I do Spider-Man because I want to get this out of the way. The Vulture's a great villain because he's just a guy,
and he makes sense.
He makes sense. He's this guy that got snubbed by Damage Control. Where he's working as part of this crew who's supposed to clean up, and there's the Battle of New York City. It's really cool how like they tie that back to it, and then he like picks up the drawing of part of the Battle of New York City or whatever. And Damage Control comes in and is like, "Hey, we're taking your jobs," and he's like, "You can't do that." And they're like, "Yeah, we can."
They took our job.
They took our job. But of course, he was understandably mad, so he's like, "Okay, we got to pack up and leave." But then he's like, he sees something like the alien technology. He's like, oh, we'll take this with us. So then it becomes like a thing of like, he has to provide for his family, which he loves very much. And that's his whole driving force is, hey, I got to provide for my family. This has been the best way to do it. I also have some sort of grudge against Tony Stark and damage control. And this is my response to it, which seems likely because in a world where there's people from space slinging laser bolts and infinity stones and Norse gods and things like that, this seems like one of the most realistic kinds of movies, like very grounded. And there's a lot of good in that, because one of the most terrifying scenes in all of the MCU is when Peter Parker has to take
Vulture's daughter.
Yeah, the Vulture's daughter to the prom, and he opens a door, and all of a sudden he sees him, and he's like, oh my gosh. He's like, that's her dad. So he's having this crisis all while they're trying to have a good time and trying to put things together. And the best scene is when they get in the car and he tells his daughter, hey, I want to talk to Pete for just a second. And he pulls out his gun and just sets it on the on the top of his chair. Yeah. And I'm like, and you can feel it. You can feel like they kind of tense up the soundtrack a little bit with this part. But I was like, this guy's like serious. And to him, that's a big deal. To Spider-Man, it was a big deal. And the other good things I want to talk about, Tom Holland is a great Spider-Man. I love him as Spider-Man. He's not my favorite Spider-Man, but he's darn close. He embodies that high school kid that is really nerdy, but also is very naive. And I like that. His best friend, Ned, is hilarious. Their chemistry carries a lot of the dialogue in this movie. Of course, he's got a crush on... He doesn't fully have a crush on MJ yet, because he has a crush on this other girl first. But the dialogue's really good. The villain's really good. He's got his suit, his Tony Stark suit that has all these gadgets, figuring that stuff out. And there's like the instant kill mode and things. Very funny. The only things I didn't like about this movie is there's a few inappropriate jokes in here. I'm okay with some inappropriate jokes. I've watched like South Park and Game of Thrones and things like that. But this movie is meant for kids when it's the most followed superhero of any age and generation. When you have a joke about porn just blatantly in the middle of your movie, I think it really really set me off a little bit. Because when I saw this in the theater, I was like, there's a couple of 3-year-old kids sitting over here. I'm like, they don't need to know what that is. I'm like, I get it. They're trying to reach to adults and kids, but that's not necessary. They would have taken that out of the movie and the movie would not have changed. And so I'm okay. If things have inappropriate jokes or inappropriate language, that's fine. But when it's completely unnecessary and can be changed, I think they should do that. Because with this movie specifically, with this hero specifically, this is going to have the broadest audience of any of your movies besides Avengers. And so other than that, it has a fantastic ending. The fight scenes are really cool. The scene where the boat gets cut in half and then he talks to Tony Stark, and Tony Stark's like basically giving him like, with great power comes great responsibility, but not quite. He's like, if you're nothing without that suit, you shouldn't have it. And that's what he learned from Captain America. Yeah. And so it's cool to see that kind of play out. And I think that the Spider-Man movie relies a little bit too heavily on being a part of the Avengers world instead of focusing a little bit more on Spider-Man's world. Other than that, this movie's fantastic. So
I agree too. Like these are really good Spider-Man movies.
What's your number 8?
My number 8 is going to be Shang-Chi.
Okay.
I think it's a very fair spot. I know a lot of people probably rank it a lot lower than what me and probably what you have.
Lower as in like?
In their 10s.
Oh, okay. I see. Yeah.
They're 11, 12, 13.
Sure.
Area.
Sure.
I feel like that's where most people would rank
probably. Yeah.
Shang-Chi at. But like, just like how Guardians of the Galaxy was, like, this movie's unique for the rest of the MCU.
I love this movie.
Like, combine a Bruce Lee, Jackie Chan type movie and put it into the MCU.
And it's just nonstop fun.
Yeah, and that's what Shang-Chi is for me. villain is unique, at least because
I
it's like,
love him.
like Dad.
Wu, yeah.
Dad has to be the villain, the real main villain of the Ten Rings.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you get to see kind of the past and history of him as well too. You get to see a son that was never able to fill his father's shoes in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
A lot of good comedy.
Yeah, he has
as well too.
his
Side
best
characters,
friendship. Yeah.
The side characters make this super funny.
Yeah. I love the interactions between him and Awkwafina's character.
Yeah.
They have amazing chemistry. You see it on screen. It's funny. It's heartwarming. And it pays off.
Yeah.
So,
and then you have just new characters that they add into it that let the jokes land.
Yeah.
Like you have the little creature or whatever that only the artist can hear what he has to say. And
yeah, he's like a little fluff ball with like little like wings. I forgot what they called him.
Oh yeah.
But
it was fun. Yeah.
Super
This
fun.
is a very fun movie. Main character learns a good lesson about having to kind of take his father's responsibility of holding the 10 rings for the future.
Yeah.
And you see a dad that was going through a lot of hardship when mom had passed away, that he was a ruthless warlord his whole entire life, and the woman changed that aspect of him.
And he learns that he can be in that sort of lifestyle without having to sacrifice who he is or what he loves.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really important lesson.
Yeah. What did this movie lack in some ways? I just again, it was a very funny movie. Maybe in some ways, maybe not serious enough. Which I don't know if I can even say that as well too, because that was a very serious scene when his mother gets killed.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It's in some ways, maybe it's just too lighthearted with how serious of a tone it has. Maybe that would be a better way to describe it. And I feel like he doesn't have a lot of flaws for having this much of a baggage and a backstory.
Yeah, I would say inherently that his flaws are an avoidance of responsibility.
Yeah.
He spends his life kind of turning away from what he needs to be doing. But that's not necessarily a flaw. So I kind of agree. He doesn't seem to, at this moment, have a lot of flaws to his character. But maybe he will later. So
exactly. And that's what, I don't know, that's what I think I kind of liked with old Tony Stark and Captain America, is that they start to build the flaws out within these guys.
Yeah.
And it just makes that character that much more of a person than they are a actor or whatever.
Yeah, because there was almost no flaws in Captain America's character for the first movie.
Yep.
But over time you realize he's made mistakes, and in Civil War and things like that, he's continuing to make mistakes.
Yeah.
So yeah.
But overall great movie. Great concept that they brought into the MCU. I'm curious to see what the 10 rings are going to bring in for the future.
Yeah, so excited.
New Avengers movies and stuff like that. So, what is your number 8?
All right, buckle up, because this is one of my hot takes. This is one that I have way higher than everybody else. Iron Man 3. I love this movie. This movie's fantastic. It's so weird, and I'm all in for it. I've said that about Multiverse of Madness, Thor: Love and Thunder. The same concept applies. This movie does some whack things, and I'm kind of okay with it. The Mandarin twist, where it's really just like a British actor, a lot of people that really turned them away from the movie.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, with you, you over there. I'm looking at you. But it didn't detract anything from the movie for me, because the reason why is because I never felt like the Mandarin was the real villain anyways. That I felt like it was more of just, as it was, an icon, a distraction, because Aldrich Killian in AIM was the real villain, which was essentially a lot of these movies are essentially playing on Tony Stark's past misdeeds and mistakes. And this one really comes back to bite him when it shows that he's at the height of his prime. Before he's Iron Man 1, he turns down this really smart guy who just wants to have a conversation with him up on the top of the roof, and he leaves him there. But which might seem like a dumb motivation for some people, but I don't think so, because conversations like that and interactions like that can really break people, the right people. And so I think this movie does a good job of playing on that. He has PTSD. I wish they would address this again, because I think the whole thing of like he has PTSD from the Battle of New York is such an interesting concept, where he's like, yeah, I'm Tony Stark, I'm arrogant, I can do all these things, but I also get anxious. I have anxiety attacks because this was super traumatic. That's me as an aspiring psychologist. That's really fascinating to me. The music's fantastic. The theme song's amazing. Dun, 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 dun. I got it stuck in my head always. Him and Pepper Potts, great chemistry. It's a Christmas movie, and you can't tell me otherwise. The dialogue between him and the little kid is funny because he's like, are you going to leave me just like my dad? And he's like, yeah. He's not as arrogant in this movie. He still has that streak, but he's really learning to kind of be more in tune with his environment and with others. And you see him a lot. He spends a lot of this film outside of the suit. And I think that works in his favor because he has to use more of his ingenuity and deal with his past conflicts more personally. And then he, at the very end, he gets all these suits going around and he's jumping from suit to suit, which is so creative. They got the people with the regenerative abilities. I think that's a neat concept. Although Aldrich can apparently breathe fire, but that's never addressed again, I guess. But super cool. I think it's fun. It's exciting. I think Shane Black does a wonderful job with this movie. Iron Man actually saves people out of an airplane in this movie. I want more of that. I want more of superheroes saving civilians. That's like superhero crack cocaine for me. So love that. So as a blatant thing, yeah, it has issues. It's got weird plot points. The villain is very strange. The twist is a little strange. So I acknowledge that those are flaws, and that's why I don't have it higher, but they don't push it out of my top 10 because I've seen this movie like 6 times. I love it.
Just the ending, it all kind of dissuade you in some ways too, with like all the suits are destroyed and he just has to build a group of other suits. I think that's one of the biggest things.
Oh, I see.
That would reach out to me. But
sure. So yeah, it has its problems, but I really like it. What's your number 7?
My number 7 is also going to be Spider-Man Homecoming.
Mm.
Backstory on myself. Spider-Man is my favorite superhero of all time.
Mm.
I've always been kind of a skinny, nerdy kid. So again, there's always been a kind of a personal touch of myself within the character of Peter Parker. Tom Holland is my favorite Spider-Man because he's the only person that actually looks to be the age of Spider-Man. You have Tobey Maguire in his 30s at the time. Andrew Garfield, that's a little bit closer, but still like it's like an adult hanging around a bunch of kids.
I think the best quote I ever heard is Andrew Garfield is way too hot to be playing Spider-Man. He's way too like punkish, like that like attractive skater boy, which I don't think embodies what Spider-Man is. But yeah.
Yeah, and I don't think Peter Parker would kiss Ryan Reynolds at
a... Anyways, with what you were saying.
But yeah, just I think his voice even matches it pretty well as well too. With kind of of course he's a British actor, but even this kind of fake voice that he's put on for
this fake American accent.
It sounds good, and
it does.
You see more of a quirkier type of Peter Parker, which I kind of like. Just like you see him in Civil War as well too. It's like making old fashioned movie references and pop culture references, and it's just like I feel like that's a funny superhero right there because it's just a kid has this extraordinary power. I also love the villain as well too, where just the thought process makes sense.
So good,
such a powerful scene where he puts the gun on the deal, and when he does that, it's not even about the whole entire. He's a Spider-Man, is it?
Yeah.
Okay, I thought.
I mean, he essentially has figured out that he's Spider-Man in a way, and what makes the scene terrifying is not that necessarily that he can kill him, but like the consequences of this whole business at the end. That like this is a dangerous criminal with dangerous gear that's sitting right in front of him.
Yep.
Like that's got to be, and of course he's naive. He's never dealt with anything like that.
Yeah, he's brand new to this at this point.
It's weird to think that the first people he fought were actually heroes.
Yeah.
And then but
like I said, a bunch of cool scenes as well too. So, the movie struggled with a little bit, or what was the last thing it did good was Aunt May's the prettiest in this version of it.
I'm glad that's a high point for you. I figured somebody would mention it. It's not going to be me.
But I think one thing that kind of puts it down is I do miss kind of the idea of Uncle Ben. I know Tony Stark does do a great job of pushing in to be kind of more that father figure, that role model. I don't like that Tony Stark's kind of judging him upon all this when he's trying to do his best to fight a very sophisticated villain.
Yeah.
And he's having somebody kind of like nerf him in a lot of ways. Yeah. Or say that he's not worth this when last time I checked, you guys were fighting in Sokovia and dropped a whole entire mountain on some.
Sure.
People.
Yeah. Of course, like he's an older man and Peter Parker's like, what? He's like 15 at this time.
Yeah. 15.
He's
16.
like 15. So there's also that like he's dealing with like, if this kid dies or something happens to him, there's a lot of consequences because not only is he young and new, but I am responsible for him because he's literally a minor. So,
and he's really smart too, really sophisticated. Like I know Tony Stark in instances like comment on his technology of like, hey, you did this.
I gave him the suit. I took him to Germany to the airport. If something happens to him, it's on me. Yeah. So I understand why he's probably really hard on him, but yeah, he can definitely but Spider-Man finds ways around that. Yeah. So.
Exactly. And then I think the biggest downfall of this whole entire franchise of Spider-Man is Sony. And their uncooperation with Disney.
That's fascinating, actually.
And a few things. Like, I can't remember the last time I actually watched this movie. Like,
really?
It's been a longer time than what it should be because it's not on Disney Plus. It's not on a lot of the other streaming platforms.
It was on Netflix for like a while. I think all the Spider-Man movies have been on Netflix for like a very short period of time.
Well, was it actually this one? Was it Homecoming? Was it
Homecoming and Far From Home and Into the Spider-Verse were all on Netflix for a very short period of time. But I can't remember where they are now.
Yeah, Sony's uncooperation with all this.
That has been a big thing, is that like the inaccessibility to this movie because they're fighting over the rights. It's like, come on. It's not. I mean, to them, it's probably a bigger deal than what we're making it out to be.
It's a lot of money at the end of the day to use this character. But like, I think at this point now, we've wasted Tom Holland's youth to be able to do a lot more of these.
Yeah. Because
of the inaccessibility of Sony to try to give us the content that we want.
Yeah.
Now we're going to have to switch to another Spider-Man very soon.
Yeah.
Because of this. And I think I'll stand by that to say that's probably one of the biggest frustrations with this new aspect of things, because we have brand new writing, beautiful writing that's, I think in my opinion, a lot better than the other Spider-Mans.
Yeah, I agree. We're at my number 7, aren't we? I actually moved this way up. Way up? Way down. I moved this down. I moved this lower as the context we were talking about earlier. Because this actually used to be in my top 5. It's not anymore. Thor Ragnarok. This is a good movie. I really like this movie. Full disclosure, I saw this movie more in theaters than any other Marvel movie I've ever seen in my life. I saw Thor Ragnarok in theaters 4 times with 4 separate groups of people.
I think this was the best Thor movie.
Of course. It is the best Thor movie.
So I think that kind of shocked a lot of people.
It did. It shocked me. I wasn't. When I saw the trailers for this, I was like, okay, that's pretty cool. But like, the trailers for Thor: The Dark World were pretty cool. And then this movie happened, and I was like, whoa, this is good. Yeah, so
exactly. That's what I think the biggest one is, the biggest shock factor.
Yeah.
Like, holy crap, it's a good Thor movie.
We can actually go somewhere with this character. Yeah. Bruce Banner and the Hulk are used really well in this movie. Yeah. I love their whole thing.
They were always building a chemistry between them.
Yes, like the world's strongest Avenger, and they make the jokes about it. It's funny and
you really see that.
It's clever. This movie is so colorful from a directorial standpoint. It's beautiful. It is colorful, and it's vibrant, and that really engages you in part of the movie. The side characters are hilarious. Korg and Meek, everyone like quotes Korg all the time with like the rock paper scissors joke and stuff like that. Thor is actually the least funniest character in this movie. Everyone else is pretty much funnier than him, but he still brings like that charisma.
But, honestly, I've always thought of Thor as a very serious individual, especially
Sure.
even his voice too. Like, it's a very masculine, manly voice.
I'm from Asgard.
Yeah, I don't know. It's
Yeah,
like making fun of Captain America. Like,
sure.
how can I'll let you keep talking.
It's like trying to imagine Captain America in a movie like this probably wouldn't work.
Exactly.
And a lot of the side characters that he works with would also not fit in this context either. Jeff Goldblum's in this movie as like the Grand Master of Sakaar.
Yeah.
And he's just, at this point, I don't think that Jeff Goldblum actually signs up for roles. I think he just signs up to play himself, and he just dresses up in costumes because he is the weirdest guy I've ever seen, but he's so funny. He's done so many roles. He's been in Jurassic Park. He was actually on a Dungeons and Dragons podcast. He's played D&D. He does all this sorts of cool stuff that I like.
He does
But-
crack. Just kidding. I don't know.
He does not, that I know of. But he brings like this really good charm to this movie. Loki is great in this movie. You get to explore more of that relationship between Thor and Loki. Actually, it's being explored over all these movies, but this is where it really hits hard because Odin passes away. So they have to come face to face with the fact that there is no more Odin to be like the mediator for both of them. There's only both of them.
And I think there was a big piece of things that were like Odin was the strongest. Odin was the Allfather. Like,
Odin was the wisest. He knew everything.
Yeah.
And
at the end of the day, Odin could be able to 1v1 you boys.
yeah,
Any day.
and even though he was hard on Loki, and Loki's done a lot of bad things, he still loves his family, and he shows that. And then they bring Hela into the mix. This is where some of the bad things happen in this movie. I think these are the things that hold it back a little bit. First of all, there's too many jokes in this movie. Thor: Love and Thunder suffers from this at a greater expense. But this movie, as funny as it is, it does suffer a little bit from detracting from its more serious times with jokes. And Taika Waititi, I love him. I love him as a director. He does some Star Wars stuff as well. He has a habit of doing this. And I really think if he just loosens up and on more of the jokes and makes it a little bit more serious, but still balances it with his style, that's where his success is. And for this, he makes too many jokes. He self-inserts himself as Korg, which is a good character. I love Korg, but still takes away from some of the serious moments. Hela is overpowered as heck. She just wipes the floor. One of the best and worst jokes in this movie is that she goes up to all the side characters from the first two Thor movies, all the other like Asgardians who like followed Thor into battle, and she wipes them out. And that's hilarious, but also kind of disrespectful. So, and then she goes and just wipes out Asgard like single-handedly. And they have to get Surtur to essentially do Ragnarok to kill Hela, which is an interesting concept. Really cool. Good dialogue with the Hulk. He's wanting to, kill the big monster. Very fun. There's a lot of good in this movie. Good relationships, good dialogue. It's colorful. It's vibrant. The songs are amazing. It's not too long. It's a fairly short movie.
Yeah.
It really works in that favor. Thor gets a lot of character development in it. Trying to learn that like Asgard is a people and not a place. Love all that, but it is dragged down by too many jokes. So some of the charisma between characters in the dialogue doesn't really work as much. But all in all, I think this is a really solid movie.
I think my favorite thing is that Thor, I feel like, learns the most in this movie than anything else.
Yeah, I agree.
It's Thor, you're the god of thunder, not the god of hammers.
Yeah.
Like, and that's kind of a funny concept, but really, that's the truth of the matter. It's like Thor has put so much of his faith and reliability into this hammer that he never really focused on himself. It's almost the whole entire Tony Stark concept with the suit. Except I feel like in a lot of ways, Thor put more reliability on the hammer than Tony did, even with his
Right.
suit. So that's big, and he unlocks a whole new version of himself. I think the whole eye deal was weird, though. Like removing his eye to make him look like Odin. I think they were trying to go somewhere with that, and then it's like, oh, he gets a replacement. And
yeah, I think they were going for like All-Father Thor, like that kind of comic line where he becomes like the Odin replacement. Then they kind of go back on it in Infinity War. And that's one of the very, 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 very few things that I don't like about Infinity War. Yeah. But we'll get to that much later.
Yeah, exactly. And as well, too, like you get, you get hell. I think that was such an amazing play on this. Was just like, we saw a villain that could really just show Thor that he is not the god that you think he is. Like,
and it also shows that Odin had a darker side.
Yeah.
So,
and I think that's even shows like in mythology as well too, that like Odin kind of is the bad guy in a lot of stories.
God of War Ragnarok.
Yeah, exactly.
Shout out to you.
Yeah, exactly. That's like Odin was a good guy in his own sense, but
he is represented in media in many different ways.
Exactly. And it's only depending on how you view it.
Odin in here is different than God of War Ragnarok, and is also different from Assassin's Creed Valhalla Odin. All completely different. But anyways, it's part of mythology. Exactly. What is your number 6 as we close this out on our last pick for this episode?
Mine was Thor Ragnarok. I kind of said everything I was going to say. So
okay, well then there we go.
I call for a pass.
Is there any more thoughts that you want to say on it?
I think I said most of everything. I don't know. Helen, I could agree. Helen in some ways was a tad bit too overpowered. Like,
she just wipes the floor with everybody.
Yeah, I also want to see kind of a fight scene between Hulk and her too, to see what that would be. But he did fight the Bad Wolf.
It does set up Infinity War like pretty well, because like Asgard's gone, and all of a sudden like Thanos' ship shows up, and you're like, oh, it's happening now. It kind of almost takes you by surprise, because you realize whenever this came out that Infinity War was 2 movies away. It was this movie, and then Black Panther, and then Infinity War. Yeah. So, yeah, because Thor Ragnarok came out in November, and then Black Panther came out in February of 2018, and then Infinity War came out in 2018. Yeah. So
I'll be honest, I'm a little bit slow. So when I saw the ship pull up, I was like, I gotta Google that to see what that is.
I gotta Google that. But yeah, is there any other thoughts you have on the movie at all?
I think I'm good on that. I want to hear your number 6 now.
All right, we're closing this baby out. My number 6, barely squeaking out of my top 5, is Shang-Chi.
Yep.
I love this movie. I've said that about like the past 5 movies. That's okay. Everything from 10 to 1, I love them.
These are our top 10.
Yeah. Basically, from here on out, from 6 to 1, these movies are excellent, in my opinion. Going off on what you were saying, like, this movie is exciting. The chemistry between Sean and all these side characters in this movie, like his sister, his best friend, all really good. Even his chemistry with him and his dad, when his dad his dad is such an unconventional villain. Not in the sense of like he's more realistic than like the Vulture, but he's realistic in the sense of like, this is one of the very few villains that are strictly driven by love.
Yeah.
Because for the longest time, he's this warmongering guy with the 10 rings with this amazing power, not able to age, wiping the floor with everybody. And then he gets manhandled by this girl from this lost tribe. He falls in love with her. It's a really sweet story. Actually, I'm super into it. I'm engaged because this movie is, I think you were saying that like they almost underuse Shang-Chi a little bit in this movie, just a little bit. But that's because they put a whole lot of focus on his dad, because this is really their movie. This isn't just Shang-Chi's movie. This is Shang-Chi and his dad's movie. They're both learning stuff.
You got to build up like the backstory behind this. You got to show where he came from.
Yeah.
And that's what all these movies did. It's what Iron Man did. It's what Doctor Strange did. It's
Right. He's making it seem like his dad's a bad person. His dad's done all this stuff. But his dad's not currently a bad person. He's not intentionally a bad person. He's trying to get his wife back.
Yeah.
And so they just have a difference on doing it. And Shang-Chi blames him. Sean blames him because his past is what caused the death of his mom. And he's struggling with that.
Yeah. And he even brought him as a kid into like, was it him who did it?
Yeah.
He just
offs this guy.
Mops
right
the
in
entire
front of him.
mafias.
I mean, this guy's ruthless. But that's also because he loves his wife that much.
And then he loves his son enough as well too to say that, hey, you need to be the best assassin.
Yeah, he's like, I'm bringing you with me. You're going to see this because
Ever.
this is what we do. This is what we do to people who hurt, who we love. Yeah. And so like from a father perspective or from just like a relationship perspective, like I am engaged and my fiance is amazing. I love her to death. And so if something like this happened to her and I had the 10 rings, I don't know what I would do. You know, that's the kind of thing you have to think about is like the father's not a bad person. He's reacting over grief.
Yeah. And like you've never been a warlord that's caused the conquest of every single civilization
for hundreds of years.
Ever.
Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah. And then all of a sudden this like manipulative voice is telling him like, oh, you can do this and go get your wife back. Who wouldn't want to do that? Yeah. So I think it's a point of understanding like his father's not doing good things, but he's doing it with the right intentions. So Shang-Chi is trying to get him to be like, hey, mom's gone and you just have to be the best person you can be right now. And he ends up making a sacrifice for his son. The action scenes in this movie are outstanding. They're some of my favorite action scenes in all the MCU. Some of my absolute favorite. The train fight scene is incredible.
Again, it's imagine what we can do with technology today if Jackie Chan was where he was at 30 years ago.
Yeah, yeah. Who knows?
That's why I feel like in this movie.
So, I saw Thor Ragnarok 4 times in theaters, but I've seen this movie more than I have Thor Ragnarok. This movie's got rewatchability out the wazoo. And it's exciting. It's fun. It's action-packed. It's tense. They fight like a dragon. I'm like, this is like D&D stuff. And I'm on board for this. And even like his best friend has like a character arc of like trying to like not be lazy and actually make something of herself and be able to help her friend accomplish his goal. They bring back the quote Mandarin, or his name's Trevor. And he holds like the little like fantastical animal thing. It's super fun. The highs are really, really high and the lows are not that low. The few things that I nitpick about this movie are not enough to really make me like cringe or look away and be like, oh, I wish this was different. No, I don't think I would change a whole lot about the movie. Only a few things. But
you watched me how hard it was for me to struggle to try to squeak out some issues I had with the movie.
Yeah, like there's some dialogue issues or there's some comedic issues that kind of take away from the seriousness of the plot. I think that the sister character is way underutilized.
Oh, exactly.
This is really about them two and their dad, and I feel like she was really underused.
Yeah, it's more like Dad didn't even care about you. Which I guess that was kind of the plot of it as well. Dang it.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard. And so like she takes over. But overall, this movie is fantastic. It barely squeaks out of my top 5 because you'll understand as soon as you hear my top 5 next time. Yeah. But anyways, that's it. That's all I got.
Out next time on the Big
Dragon Balls
podcast.
Dun, 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 dun. Anyways, that's our bottom 5 of our top 10. There we go. That's a way to put it.
That's a lot better vocabulary than I was.
Try saying that 3 times fast.
I'd be sitting there like, what are they talking about?
I thought we already did the bottom 10. I don't understand anything. So yeah.
Merry Christmas to everybody.
Merry Christmas.
Listening to our great listeners that listen to it very often. Sorry about the delay in the podcast for our everyday listeners. I switched offices, and we have a brand new podcast room.
Yeah,
so,
we moved studios.
we got new chairs and a bunch of new stuff. So I'd say for the future, we actually might get a lot more tech within this.
Yeah.
Whether it's we get video for the future, or maybe might do a lot of different things with audio as well too. So.
Including guests. Perhaps one day we'll be able to have guests on.
Yep.
So be on the lookout for that.
Including that as well too. But if somebody wants to support us, Christian, how do they do it?
So download our episodes on your favorite streaming platforms, including, I say streaming platforms, not Disney Plus and HBO Max, not stuff like that. Audio stuff. So Spotify, Amazon Music, Apple Music, because they have a separate podcast thing, so not the regular Amazon Music. Also, check us our Instagram at Big Screen Balls Podcast, where I'm going to be uploading a whole lot more content on that. And please share it with everybody that you know. We have a lot of topics, other topics that we want to discuss, not just Marvel stuff, but we also have cartoons, anime. Those are kind of the same thing, but in different genres. Other movies, TV series, other forms of media, potentially games, but we'll get into all that later. Please follow us and keep a lookout for our content. And thank you so much for listening to this, and thank you so much for everything that you guys do. Don't be afraid to reach out to us anytime and ask questions or give us your concerns and comments.
Oh yeah.
So,
and my Venmo, everybody is also going to be.
my Venmo.
Just kidding.
I request payment.
I don't want your money, everybody.
I don't want your filthy money.
Yeah, I have enough fun doing this as it is.
That's right. We just do this for fun, and we do this for our friendship and for you guys. We're all this little community, #BallNation. So just join us